Warning, this video contains subjective opinions. If you have a history of adverse reactions to opinions that differ from your own, please close the video immediately. If you wish to proceed anyway, I don't know how to help you with that. Good luck, I guess. So, 2020 has just ended recently, and that was one hell of a year. For a lot of people, it was downright awful. But if you're watching this video or you're subbed to this channel, you're probably a fan of anime, and some good shows were a solid way to pass the time in our own little apocalyptic practice run. I know I definitely had more free time, and I wanted to make a video on my personal favorite anime from the year. Granted, I have not seen everything, and some shows are still on my watch list for a later date, so this won't be totally comprehensive, but I do consider myself someone who watches lots of different kinds of shows, so there will certainly be a variety here. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Number 10. Somali and the Forest Spirit. This anime takes place in a fantasy world ruled by different non-human creatures, with human beings nowhere to be seen because of how tasty everyone finds them to be. The story is about a little human girl that is assisted by a golem to find the last remaining human civilization. What I found so engaging about this show is a couple of things. For one, the world is beautiful. The world building is nice, but what really brings it together is the amazing art direction that the show has. Every setting looks fantastic, and since the show is pretty much an adventure, there is a large variety of locations to show off, all of which have their own aesthetic distinction. It's just a very beautiful show, and I could recommend it on that alone. The second thing I love is the relationship between the girl Somali and the golem, as he becomes a sort of father figure to her while he comes to terms with that relationship. Overall, I'd recommend this series off of the great visuals and how genuinely wholesome a lot of this show is. It's cute, fun, and genuinely very well written. The only real criticism I'd give it is that because of the nature of the show, the adventure is the only overarching plot. Every location they go to has its own subplot, and the show's pacing can get a little slow and maybe a little boring because of that. Other than that, though, it's a show I'm glad I watched each week. Number 9. Appare Ranman. This anime takes place in 19th century America at the dawn of the automobile. Appare and Kusame are hailing from Japan, with Appare wishing to take part in a car race to cross the continental US, with Appare wanting to win with his homemade car and Kusame wanting to use the prize money to get home. Overall, this is a very fun anime with a lot of fun characters. You get to know just about everyone taking part in the race and their own reasons for wanting to win as you get swept up in this little adventure. I especially love the main character, Appare. He's the classic super rational, super genius type of character, but he's handled in a way that feels very genuine and never came off as a cliche to me. The only weak character, in my opinion, is Kusame. He's a fun foil for Appare's personality, but other than that, he's pretty boring. That being said, I enjoy just about everything else in this show. If you want to have a fun time with some fun characters, I think you'll really enjoy this show. Number 8. Oregairu Season 3. There is something to be said about the importance of an ending. It's no secret that it can either make or break a story, and in my opinion, Oregairu absolutely nails its ending. I am personally not a huge slice-of-life romance kind of guy, but when there is one I like, it's the kind of show I can get really invested in. With this being its final season, I'm not gonna avoid spoilers here, so if that bothers you, skip to the next part on the timeline or in the description. Okay, so the ending. In a romance, an ending is usually conflated with who the MC ends up with. Hachiman ends up with Yukinon, which in hindsight does not surprise me in the least. Much of what this show is about is finding that genuine connection in a world where relationships and dialogue can become overly complicated and filled with faux intentions. Now, personally, I was Team Saika. The clues were there from the beginning, but in all seriousness, I adore this moment where they affirm their feelings for each other. Now, obviously, I cannot give a show high marks just on its ending. I think the overall plot of the season of setting up a prom is kinda boring in concept. It's obvious that this plot was made to facilitate a lot of character interactions that I fucking loved, but it does make some scenes kind of boring with them setting the prom up. At the end of the day, though, the show has always been about the conflicting emotions and relationships between these three, and it handles that with an ending that is fitting of the show's themes and messages. Because of that, it deserves a spot in my top 10. Number 7, Akudama Drive. This anime takes place a while after an apocalyptic event that left the world with two cities, Kansai and Kanto. This show takes place in Kansai, with our main character being an ordinary girl swept up in a criminal plan beyond her control, and she is forced to adapt to the awful circumstances coming her way. The show features a pretty strong cast of characters. All of the main cast are criminals, ranging from the deluded and insane to the cold and focused to the ordinary street criminal. What the show really excels at is building up this really interesting sci-fi world and showing how these colorful characters get by in it. I don't want to spoil any of the twists, so I won't go into its story much, but I will say that its overall plot and ending is fantastic. Another compliment goes to its art and animation. The art style is very visually distinct, and I love these neat transitions where parts of the setting come together to form the scene. The only criticisms I have for it is the pacing can be kinda slow sometimes, and the abilities of the characters are a bit absurd. There are no superpowers in this show, but some of the feats of the characters are straight up ridiculous, and if you don't have a good suspension of disbelief, this show will just not really be for you. In the end, though, I highly recommend this anime. Just a great watch overall. Number 6, Moriarty the Patriot. This anime is a loose adaptation of the classic story of Sherlock Holmes with a neat twist. Instead, it is, at first, told from the perspective of the famed villain Moriarty, with him being the protagonist. The story is all about how Moriarty rose from poverty and schemed his way into riches so that he can remove the blatantly evil classism of his home. It starts out as a fun twist on the Sherlock Holmes formula, with Moriarty taking cases from people. However, instead of solving crimes, he personally punishes those who commit them in the name of justice. As a sort of anti-hero, he is an incredibly engaging protagonist, having all the charm, wit, charisma, and intelligence befitting such a classic villain, but in the main character role. The show also really starts getting good when its version of Sherlock shows up. From this point on, it does not make Sherlock an antagonist, but instead makes them both the protagonist, competing against each other as Sherlock tries to unveil Moriarty's schemes. I enjoyed every episode of this show. It's written very intelligently, with brilliant crimes being committed rather than solved. If you love this kind of stuff, then you will love this show. I am certain of it. Number 5, Jujutsu Kaisen. The new hit show that everyone's watching about a boy eating a cursed finger and getting caught up in problems way too big for him. Now, I already talked about why it's a good adaptation from the manga in another video, but here, I'll just talk about the show so far and my thoughts. The biggest strength of this show is the characters. They're all pretty grounded, but have enough personality to work off each other very well, making for what the series does best: fun character interactions. The action is also top-notch, with some amazing animation. The music is also top-notch, setting the scenes really well. Overall, it's just a really well-made show with good characters. I also like Itadori quite a bit, and how he's just this small part of this big plot, trying to do what he can in it. The only criticism I have at this point in the story is it can move kinda fast for my liking. Like the whole Junpei plotline, I think it could have been spread out a bit, as I think their friendship could have been a bit better built and established. But other than that, this anime leaves me with very little to actually complain about. Number 4, Decadence. This anime takes place in a world where most of humanity kinda kicked the bucket, with the last remaining ones living in the large structure of the Decadence, and they have to defend it from a bunch of creatures called the Gadol. All the while, there's a secret about how this world functions that I don't want to spoil, but it's literally in episode 2, so, just watch the show and you'll see for yourself. If I had to describe this show to anyone by comparison, I would say it's like Gurren Lagann mixed with the Monster Hunter games, if that makes any sense to anyone. And I really liked this show. It's just hard to describe it accurately without giving away key pieces of the plot. So if any of this sounds appealing to you, please check it out for yourself. The only real con I have with it is that a lot of the monsters are CGI, which is pretty noticeable, but you get used to it. It's still a really solid, feel-good sci-fi adventure, and I think you'll enjoy it if you like that type of thing. Number 3, ID Invaded. This anime features the invention of a device that allows people to enter into the human mind and read the abstract things found within it. It is used by criminal investigators to find dangerous criminals, so it's pretty much Criminal Minds with a sci-fi twist to it. Now, unlike before, I'm actually gonna give my criticisms first. The whole abstract mind stuff is just okay, honestly. Like, it's fine and not the most interesting part of the show. At worst, it can come off as really pretentious writing, which kind of annoyed me, like in the first episode. But what this show does well more than makes up for it, and easily made it earn the number 3 spot on this list. This anime has such a strong grasp of its character writing, and uses its understanding of psychology to build some really interesting people. The main character especially is a fascinating person to watch the show through, as his struggles slowly take the limelight of the anime. Not to mention many of the criminals having some pretty interesting psychologies, and that having a stark contrast to the relatively sane people within the show. It's an anime that I wasn't sure about at first and bored me a bit, but kept getting better and more interesting until I absolutely loved it. Number 2, Dorohedoro. How do I even describe this show? I'm probably showing the OP right now, and maybe you can tell that it's a bit of an acid trip. Alright, I'll try, don't worry. So, this show takes place in the world of Hole, which is a gritty, desolate place where normal people try to get by. Living above them are the magic users, who use the normal people as test subjects. When I say magic though, don't imagine a classic fantasy deal. Everything about this show is weird. Instead, magic users have this smoke in their body that has a unique effect for everyone. Oh, also the main character is a lizard man trying to find out who changed him, and he has a dude inside of him that will tell him if he finds the person who did it. Is this making any sense to you? Because it shouldn't, frankly. This show is immensely weird, but I loved every second of it. Again, what makes this show so good is character. Every character is weird, and most are some type of deranged, but almost all of them are so lovable because of it. Hell, we even have these 2 antagonists, but the story treats them like a second set of protagonists because they're just so dang likable. The friendships in the show are also so tangible and engaging. It's a fun show in a weird but really interesting world with great characters where I guarantee you will not be able to predict what happens next. Like, ever. And finally, number 1. Drum roll, please. Actually, I'll just put a sound effect for it, maybe. Anyway, here we go. ReZero Season 2. Now, this being a Season 2, I'm once again not gonna avoid spoilers here. This season is fucking amazing. Season 1 ended on Subaru overcoming some of his core flaws and attaining his first huge victory that he absolutely earned. So how do you start the second season of this depressing show? Well, you immediately invalidate the victory as more enemies show up and have one of the most popular characters be forgotten by everyone and put in a coma. That huge victory subverted by one of the most despairing things to happen in the show, and it is the perfect way to start the season off. This season centers on Subaru and Emilia trying to liberate the people in the sanctuary and Subaru's encounters with the witches. While the Emilia subplot is interesting, it takes a backstage to what the core is really about. Subaru. Instead of being able to learn his way out of situations, everything becomes increasingly unpredictable, and it is the truest test of his resolve to get things done. This time, using the help of those around him more effectively. And the way this season continues to break him with plot twist after plot twist is so engaging. I could honestly go on and on about this season, I love it that much, but I'll sum it this way. ReZero Season 2 Core 1 is everything I love about the first season, cranked up to 11 and made even better. And because of that, it absolutely deserves my number 1 spot for Best Anime of 2020. And that marks my take on the best anime of 2020. Did you agree? Did you disagree? Be sure to angrily tell me in the comments how wrong I am and how horrible my taste is. In all seriousness, what were your favorite anime this year, and what did you think I missed out on? Aside from that, this year was kind of a big deal for me. I started my YouTube channel and have already reached over 500 subs in those short 4 months I've been on here, and I've had a good time with it. I'm genuinely thankful for every single one of you who watches my content. I hope you all do well and have a great 2021. See you around.